Air conditioning leaking. I did this several months ago. This is a 1983 Benz 300 TD. I think it's, make sure, 300 TD. And as you can see, this is one of the cleanest cars for this year, make, model year, you will probably ever see in your lifetime. Very few people will see a vehicle this clean of this year. Still original paint on it. Still even has the original Cosmoline undercoat. Most of it was removed when it was steam cleaned. You could see some remnants of it down inside there, but they cleaned it really good. Came in with 35 psi of refrigerant in the system. They barely ever drive it, but when they do, it's not often, and they just went to drive it. Notice there's no AC, even though it's like 48 degrees outside. You still have a strong sun with a lot of glass, and you will feel a heat load on yourself due to the sun, and you might want to hook on the AC. And spring is coming, so I've been asked to come back and look at it. And even with the dye, of course I'm not going to find no dye, because of course it turned out to be one of those ones that are not spewing out dye and a big leak, and it just sits, and the dye sits with the oil at all the lowest spots. So this leak I did find really fast. I threw in dry nitrogen on top of the 35 psi of vapor at 169 psi, and I found it down here. There we go. Come on, focus. Focus, come on, guy. I mean, goddamn, I got an iPhone 13s Plus and it doesn't like to focus. So it looks like, here, focus on my hand. No focus. Nope. It doesn't want to focus. There we go. So here I am. I'm back at and I'm just holding it right at the face of the clutch gap right there. Kind of suspected, but no dye came through. So this is one. It doesn't leak while it's moving. It leaks while it's at rest. It doesn't lose no oil. It doesn't fling oil or any of the dye on any of the frame or anything like that. But every time you turn it off and you have it at rest, it leaks. So we got a leaky front shaft seal. Now I've been going over, these are the original hoses, and I was looking for the little telltale dots. Okay, so there's things called weep holes, especially on these old ones. Let me zoom in here. There. See those little tiny holes, like somebody looks like they took a pin and they put a little tiny hole every so often, and they're evenly. Those are weep holes. So when there's is a slight refrigerant leak that was very common on old hoses, instead of making a, and it's made in 2 to 3 layers of the hoses depending on the manufacturer, the outer layer would be gas tight, and what would happen is it would leak inside, and then if you did not have these weep holes, it would balloon up and it could pop and it could hurt someone. But so what they did was they put weep holes to let the refrigerant out, and you would just top off the can, because that's what you did back in these days with R12. You just kept adding cans, and they were pretty indestructive compressors, and they could take that kind of stuff. But what you would do is you would take your leak detector and you would go on top of each one of these holes and just keep following these holes all over the system, and sometimes you would get lucky and you'll find one. Doesn't mean it's not leaking if you don't find one. It still could be leaking, and it won't leave no dye and no oil residue. It is possible to have no oil residue but have leaks through your hose. And sometimes it has to be on a hot day. The rubber has to get hot. The high side pressure has to be 225 psi, and then it'll leak like a sieve. And then as soon as the pressure gets down to say 175, I'm just giving you examples I've come across, all of a sudden the leaks would stop in the hose. It would only leak over, lose some of the refrigerant, and then when the system couldn't get above 175, the leak would turn off, and it would repeat that process over and over. And this one is the compressor. So this one's going to get a compressor, a new receiver dryer. You always, on this age and year, always get new switches if it has switches on it. So we'll be changing that switch down there. And then here's another one from a year or two ago. I did this one, they said 2 years ago. This is from the other shop just down the street. And he says, we first did this one 2 years ago. It was a new customer, and now they want to use the AC. And of course it's leaking. This was an aftermarket. Remember, on these years, these were dealer installed or aftermarket installed. Definitely look at the hunky little placement of the receiver dryer. And I went around, I've done this, there's UV dye in it, cannot find no leaks, probably find the same thing again. And I don't have time to do this one today because this one, they just came over, they see me over here doing this shop. This vehicle is in here for another shop, it's just being stored right now. But they see me over here, so they ran over, told me about this one, and I'm way behind schedule, backlogged with vehicles, so I cannot fit it in on today's test. I don't even know that there's refrigerant over here. But I'm just looking for really obvious stuff. And went around with the UV dye. So tomorrow I'm coming back on this old one. And this is another extremely beautiful car. Just like all the cars in here are way above your average vehicles. There's not a car in here. There's more money in here in cars than 3 of my houses are worth in San Francisco. That's how much money there are here in just in this garage in cars. All right, so I'll see you guys making another video tomorrow as I look for that leak for that blue Mercedes inside there. I located this one and I'll let them know what it is. And this one will be supposedly coming back as a video because he wants to fix it, or at least gas it up and get it going until they get the new compressor in hand. And then I'll come back, take out the refrigerant for them, they'll throw the compressor on the receiver dryer, and then we'll go through that process. Just depends what kind of time issue, and if money is no concern, they say fill it up, drive it for a week or two, and then come back and drain out the gas and do it. A whole bunch of different options. But as you can see, I used 3 different UV lights. And anybody who knows the Infracon D-Tech Stratus, I gotta say this, for non-CFC refrigerant gases, this is probably one of the best handheld refrigerant leak detectors you could get for non-CFC refrigerant gases. I think only the old H10 will outdo it just by a little bit on the CFC gases for sure. But when it came to the non-CFC gases, and you should know what CFC gases and non-CFC gases are, this guy says that's why you have to have 2 leak detectors. One that's really good at CFC gases and one that's good at the others. All right, guys, I'll see you later.